Story 1. You know, hospitals are creepy, even during the day. But at night, man, it's like the place has a whole different vibe. And let me tell you what happened to a nurse I know. Her name's Lisa. So, Lisa was doing her thing, going through paperwork in the break room. It was late, probably around 2 a.m., the kind of late where the world feels quiet, and your mind starts playing tricks on you. Anyway, she had a stack of patient files spread out in front of her and was trying to get them sorted before her shift ended. The break room lights were those dim, flickery fluorescent ones that give everything this weird yellow tint. The kind that makes shadows look deeper than they really are. And in the corner of the room, there was this chair, just a regular old chair, pushed back into the shadows like someone had forgotten to pull it out after lunch. Lisa was focused, scribbling notes and flipping through files, when she heard it, her name. Lisa! She froze. It wasn't loud or anything, just a whisper. Soft. Like someone was trying not to wake the dead, you know? It came from the corner of the room where that chair was. She laughed it off at first. You know how it is, right? You hear things when you're tired. Your brain just messes with you. So, she shook her head, muttered something about needing more coffee, and kept working. But then it happened again. Lisa. This time, she turned around, and her eyes went straight to the chair in the corner. It was moving. Not a lot. Just a slow, lazy spin like someone had given it a gentle push. Now, Lisa wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. She told herself it was probably just the air conditioning kicking in, or maybe someone had bumped it earlier, and it was finally settling. But here's the thing. There was no air conditioning vent near that corner, and the chair didn't stop spinning. It kept going. Slowly. Lisa stood up, heart pounding, and took a step closer. She wanted to prove to herself it was nothing, that it was just her imagination. But the closer she got, the more wrong it felt. The chair wasn't just spinning, it was almost intentional. Like someone was sitting there, kicking their feet lightly to keep it moving. "Hello?" she said, her voice nervous. She hated how scared she sounded. No answer. She reached out and touched the chair. It stopped moving immediately, like it had been caught in the act. Lisa laughed, nervously, but a laugh's a laugh, right? She shook her head, muttered, "I'm losing it," and went back to her paperwork. But here's where it gets weird. A few minutes later, she felt it. Not heard, felt. Like someone was standing behind her, breathing down her neck. That kind of heavy, cold feeling that makes your skin crawl. She whipped around, expecting to see one of her coworkers playing a prank, but the room was empty, except for the chair. It was spinning again. Lisa swore under her breath. This wasn't funny anymore. She grabbed the chair, dragged it to the middle of the room, and plopped it down. "Stay," she said, half joking, half serious. She went back to her seat, but she couldn't focus. Her eyes kept darting to the chair, just sitting there like nothing had happened. She tried to convince herself it was fine, that she was just overtired. She even considered leaving the break room, but her pride wouldn't let her. And then she heard it again. Lisa. This time it was louder, closer. She stood up so fast, her chair scraped against the floor. "Who's there?" she yelled, her voice echoing in the empty room. Nothing. The chair wasn't spinning anymore, but it was wrong. It was turned slightly, just enough to look like it was facing her. Lisa backed up, her hands gripping the edge of the table. She didn't want to take her eyes off the chair, but she needed to get out of there. She reached for the door handle behind her, fumbling blindly. And then the lights flickered. You know that cliche in horror movies, where the lights go out, and when they come back on, something's changed? Yeah, that happened. When the lights came back, the chair was right in front of her. I'm talking inches away. Lisa screamed. She didn't even think. She just bolted out of the room, down the hallway, and straight to the nurse's station. Her coworker, Karen, was there, looking at her like she'd lost her mind. "What's wrong with you?" Karen asked, sipping her coffee like nothing weird was going on. Lisa tried to explain, but she sounded crazy even to herself. A spinning chair? A voice calling her name. She knew how it sounded. Karen just shook her head and said, "You need sleep." Lisa nodded, pretending to agree, but she couldn't get rid of the feeling. She spent the rest of her shift avoiding the break room, and when morning finally came, she practically ran out of the hospital. She thought that was the end of it. But the next night, when she came back for her shift, something was off. The break room door was open, and that same chair was sitting in the middle of the room, like it had been waiting for her. Lisa didn't go in. She avoided the break room for the rest of her shifts that week. She even started bringing her paperwork to the nurse's station, just to have an excuse not to go back in there. And then, a few nights later, one of her coworkers mentioned something weird. "Hey, have you noticed the break room feels different?" Lisa froze. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Her coworker shrugged. "I don't know. Just feels colder in there. And sometimes I swear I hear someone whispering. Like, my name." Lisa's stomach dropped. To this day, she won't talk about it unless she's had a few drinks. But every time she tells the story, she swears it's true. Story 2. I've heard all kinds of weird things working as a night nurse. You'd think the oddest part of my job would be the long hours or the endless rounds of paperwork. But no, it's the people. People say the strangest things when they think no one's listening or when they really want to mess with you. But nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever gotten to me like that one night with Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter wasn't an easy patient. He'd been in and out of the hospital for years. Always something different. Sometimes it was his heart, sometimes his lungs, and sometimes it was just, well, something in his head, you know? He talked to himself a lot, muttering under his breath. But you couldn't make out the words. But I figured, hey, it's just an old guy with a lot on his mind. What's the worst that could happen? That night, I was doing my rounds like usual. The hospital was quiet, just the sound of machines and the occasional distant beep from a monitor. I liked those moments, the calm before the chaos. When I got to Mr. Carter's room, the door was slightly ajar. I peeked in and saw him sitting up in bed, staring at the corner of the room. "Mr. Carter," I said, stepping inside. "You need anything?" He didn't respond right away. His head tilted slightly, his thin, wiry hair catching the faint glow of the nightlight we kept in the corner. Then, without looking at me, he murmured, "They don't like you." I stopped mid-step. "What was that?" "They don't like you," he said again, louder this time, his voice raspy but clear. His eyes never left that corner. Now, I'll admit, I've got a decent sense of humor, and patients saying creepy stuff isn't new to me, but something about the way he said it, it wasn't a joke. It was like he was stating a fact, like he was warning me. I glanced over at the corner, the one he was so fixated on. At first, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. It was just a shadowy spot where the light didn't quite reach. But as I stared, it started to look wrong. You ever see something that isn't moving, but it feels like it is? Like when you stare at water and think it's still, but then you realize it's rippling just slightly. That's what this corner looked like. The shadows were deeper than they should have been, darker than the rest of the room. And the weirdest part, it felt like it was pulsing, like it had a heartbeat of its own. I shook it off. Lack of sleep messes with your head, right? "Mr. Carter," I said, keeping my voice steady, "there's nothing there. It's just a shadow." He finally turned to look at me. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, and there was something in them I couldn't quite place. Fear. No, it was worse than that. Resignation. "They don't like you," he repeated, almost whispering now. "You shouldn't have come in here." I didn't know what to say to that. I tried to laugh it off, but it came out shaky. "Well, too late now, huh?" He didn't smile, didn't blink, just turned back to the corner and kept staring. Now, I've got a job to do, and part of that job is keeping patients calm. So, I walked over to him, grabbed his chart from the foot of the bed, and started flipping through it like everything was normal. "How are you feeling tonight, Mr. Carter?" He didn't answer. I followed his gaze again, back to that corner. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I looked long enough, I'd see what he was seeing. And you know what? I think I did. The shadows weren't just dark. They were deep. Like, impossibly deep. It was like looking into a hole that went on forever, but it wasn't just emptiness. There was something in there, something moving. I couldn't make out a shape, but I could feel it. It wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. And whatever it was watching us. I felt a chill run down my body. It wasn't cold in the room, but I swear I could see my breath fogging up in front of me. "Mr. Carter," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what do you see?" "They don't like you," he said again. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Why don't they like me?" I asked, not even sure why I was playing along. "Because you don't belong here," he said. Then he added, almost to himself, "You're not supposed to see them." Okay, I'll admit it. I was officially freaked out. I told myself it was just an old man saying weird stuff, that I was just tired and my brain was playing tricks on me. But that corner, it didn't feel right. I took a step closer to it. Don't ask me why. I guess part of me wanted to prove to myself that it was nothing. But the closer I got, the different the air felt. It was like trying to walk through water, every step harder than the last. My chest felt tight, like something was squeezing me from the inside. "Don't," Mr. Carter said suddenly, his voice sharp. I froze. "They don't like you," he said again. "If you get too close, they'll let you know." I should have listened. I should have turned around, walked out of that room, and never looked back. But no, I had to be stubborn. I took another step. That's when it happened. The shadows in the corner, they moved. Not like a flicker or a trick of the light. They moved. They stretched out, reaching across the floor like long, creepy fingers. I swear I heard a faint whisper, like a dozen voices all speaking at once, but I couldn't make out the words. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. The shadows stopped, retreating back into the corner like they'd never moved at all. "What the hell?" I muttered, more to myself than to anyone else. "They don't like you," Mr. Carter said one last time. He sounded almost sad. I didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped his chart. I backed away from the corner, from him, from the whole room. I'll check on you later," I stammered, fumbling for the door. As soon as I stepped out into the hallway, the air felt lighter. I could breathe again, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that I was being watched, even out there. I didn't go back into Mr. Carter's room that night. I couldn't. I told one of the other nurses to take over, made up some excuse about not feeling well. The next morning, I found out Mr. Carter had passed away in his sleep. They said it was peaceful, that he just slipped away. But I couldn't help but wonder. Every now and then, when I'm alone, I think about that corner. I try to tell myself it was just my imagination, just a tired mind playing tricks on me. But deep down, I know what I saw.